Is she dead? At 5 a.m., Tan Luo was jolted awake by a nightmare. She instinctively reached out to check if she was still breathing, then, just as habitually, felt the familiar disappointment. Or perhaps she should feel thankful she was still alive. The King of Hell, disturbed by her, leaned over and licked her face. This gesture had been repeated for 14 years. The King of Hell was a golden retriever Tan Luo had taken in. 14 years ago, when Tan Luo was kicked out of her home and left wandering the streets, she encountered this stray dog. Tan Luo lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. About half an hour later, she got out of bed barefoot. After a whole night's sleep, her body still ached terribly. Tan Luo walked into the closet and past the mirror in the corner. She paused for a moment, frowning as she looked at her reflection. There was a distinct bruise on her face. The man from yesterday had landed a punch right on her face, and she hadn't treated it when she returned. She had just gone straight to bed, and now the bruise was even more obvious. Tan Luo was a lawyer, a cold-blooded one who never let things slide. She had been in the job for 4 years and had made a lot of enemies. However, she had always managed to resolve things easily until 3 months ago when she took on a case that changed everything. She was cold, unyielding, and angered her clients. 3 months ago, she took on a case involving school bullying. A senior boy had been tormenting a female classmate for a long time, and the girl, unable to bear it any longer, committed suicide. The girl's parents sued the boy. It was the boy's parents who hired Tan Luo. They had heard of her reputation, young, undefeated, and particularly skilled at handling bullying cases, and they paid a hefty fee to get her. After understanding the details of the case, Tan Luo immediately kicked the clients out, turned around, and became the lawyer for the girl's parents, offering her help unconditionally without charging a single cent in lawyers' fees. Tan Luo was notorious in the industry for being heartless. No one knew why she did what she did. There were all sorts of rumors circulating, but none of them believed she was acting out of sympathy or kindness. Everyone knew Tan Luo had no conscience, sharp-tongued, yet vicious and hypocritical. For this case, Tan Luo was scolded by her superiors and beaten twice by the boy's father. Well, technically, it was more like he attacked her twice. The boy was repeating his senior year and had just turned 18. Tan Luo won the case, and the boy was sentenced to prison. Yesterday, his father had blocked her on the street and beaten her again, but in the end, Tan Luo sent him straight to the police station. Tan Luo rubbed the bruise on her face, not showing much emotion. These injuries had become second nature to her. She was tough and could endure the blows. She threw on a coat and walked into the living room, her gaze frozen for a moment as she looked at the calendar on the wall. It was the beginning of spring. Yanghe Qizhe, Pinwu Jie Chun. The spring warmth stirs the insects. Everything comes back to life. Tan Luo never liked this saying. She didn't care for the season of rebirth and vitality. She preferred the melancholy of autumn winds, the feeling of desolation that came with it. After finishing a whole bottle of mineral water, Tan Luo went to the kitchen to heat up milk for the King of Hell, preparing a nutritious breakfast for it. She then grabbed a simple piece of bread for herself. The King of Hell was getting weaker. It had lost a few teeth, and the remaining ones were worn down. Eating had become slow for it. Tan Luo sat on the floor, quietly stroking its rough, graying fur, as they both sat in silence. Ding! Her phone rang. She ignored it. It wasn't until the phone rang a third time, after the King of Hell finished eating, that she slowly walked back to the bedroom to grab her phone. An unfamiliar number. Damn it! Tan Luo, why are you only picking up now? Sure, you is drunk. Come pick him up. A man's angry shouting came through the phone, accompanied by loud background noise. Sure you? Tan Luo paused for a moment before she finally remembered who Sure You was. Sure You was her husband. They had married right after she graduated from college 4 years ago. 3 months ago, the two of them had a huge argument, and Sure You went on a business trip. Thinking about it, it had been 3 months since they last saw each other. Tan Luo absent-mindedly touched the ring on her fourth finger. 3 months, so long. Long enough that she had almost forgotten she was married, long enough that she thought she could forget Shiryu. At 7 a.m., Tan Luo applied a delicate makeup to cover up the obvious bruise on her face, and then drove to a bar 20 kilometers away. Suchi took her to the lounge on the second floor of the bar. Before entering, he told her to prepare herself mentally. Tan Luo, I'm not here to catch your husband cheating. I just want to tell you, if you're unwilling to give Shiryu a child, there are plenty of women out there who would fight to bear his child. So, whatever you see inside, it's all because of your own doing. Su Qi was Shiryu's best friend. He couldn't stand Tan Luo, often speaking to her in a sarcastic and mocking tone. Tan Luo ignored him, kicked the door open, and walked in confidently. Su Qi scoffed, following her in. Upon seeing the clothes of women scattered all over the floor, he couldn't hide his schadenfreude. Whoa, seems like things are getting pretty heated. Don't worry, Tan Luo. Even if Shiryu slept with 100 women, you'll always be the legitimate wife of the Shir family. With a sarcastic smile on his handsome face, Su Qi added salt to the wound. But Tan Luo didn't even spare him a glance. She walked in calmly, her face composed. She clicked in her high heels, walking to the bed, bent slightly, and, under Su Qi's dumbfounded gaze, pinched Shiryu's nose with her right hand and covered his mouth with her left. A minute later, Shiryu, still asleep, suddenly opened his eyes, his handsome face flushed red. His bloodshot eyes stared at Tan Luo with a confused yet sharp gaze, and his burning hands immediately grabbed her wrists. Seeing that he had woken up, Tan Luo released her grip, pulled her wrists away from his grasp, and picked up his clothes from the floor. She began silently dressing him, lifting the blanket and putting his clothes on with meticulous care. Shiryu, still drunk, though briefly awake, stared at her with blurry eyes. He didn't say anything, and allowed her to dress him. Su Qi's face twitched in disbelief, staring at Tan Luo with a look of pure sarcasm and contempt. Tan Luo, how can you stand this? Your husband is sleeping with other women. Can't you see all the clothes on the floor? Tan Luo didn't look back, continuing her task of dressing him carefully, from his underwear to his sweater. Su Qi, just how much do you hate me? This is your bar. Your friend is cheating right here on your turf. Do you believe that I could close this place down tomorrow if I wanted to? When Tan Luo put his shoes on, she spoke nonchalantly. Su Qi's face changed. He took a step back, frozen. You? Tan Luo, stop saying useless things. I'm not joking. Your husband really slept with another woman. You. Smack. Get out. Shiryu woke up fully, grabbed a pillow, and threw it at Su Qi. Su Qi flinched and quickly ran away. Tan Luo finished putting his shoes on and stood up, ready to leave, but Shiryu grabbed her wrist, pulling her back into his arms. I didn't betray you, but Su Qi is trying to deceive you. I know. I didn't stop him. Tan Luo, why do you always act so indifferent? Is it that, even if I slept with another woman, you wouldn't care? Shiryu buried his head in her neck, his voice heavy and full of hurt. Tan Luo didn't know how to respond. She wanted to explain, but the words didn't come out. She could only remain silent again. Shiryu gave a bitter laugh, his body trembling. Tan Luo, if you don't love me, let's get a divorce. Marrying Shiryu was an accident. Timing, place, and people never aligned. After Tan Luo graduated, her family tried to control her, forcing her to return to her hometown to work and marry the mayor's son. Tan Luo resisted fiercely, but they took her ID away to prevent her from leaving. At that moment, Tan Luo realized that in order to completely escape this nightmare of a place, she had to come up with a fundamental solution to the problem. The only way she could think of at that time was to quickly get married and transfer her household registration. Shiryu was the older brother of Shir Xian, a classmate from Tan Luo's university. He was 7 years older than her, a design director at a construction company, a young, handsome talent from a state-owned enterprise. Tan Luo was an introvert. From childhood, she had no friends. The only person she could talk to was her university classmate, Shir Xian. Sure, Xian had a lively personality, and Tan Luo was actually envious of people like that, so she always avoided her. But despite Tan Luo's indifference, Sure Xian always tried to talk to her, even though she was constantly met with coldness and rejection. Sometimes, Tan Luo would even insult her. Although Tan Luo was like a hedgehog, she couldn't resist Sure Xian's warm-hearted nature and would occasionally chat with her. Tan Luo was able to escape her home thanks to Sure Xian. On Sure Xian's birthday, she called Tan Luo to invite her to the party. At that time, Tan Luo was locked in her room, and her mother had taken her phone. Sure Xian's call saved her. Tan Luo's mother returned her phone and ID card, saying that she had finally made a friend and let her go out for 2 days. Tan Luo's mother kept the dog, King of Hell, knowing that with it around, Tan Luo would obey. Even though she let Tan Luo leave, she was confident she would come back and comply with their arrangements. Tan Luo didn't say a word. She held onto King of Hell and refused to let go for a long time. Finally, after the dog's distressed cries, she tightly gripped the household registration book she had secretly taken from home and left. At Sure Xian's birthday party, Tan Luo met Shiryu. He had just turned 30 and was being pressured by his family to go on blind dates. While Tan Luo was walking around the corner, she overheard him arguing with his family. Shiryu's parents had arranged a blind date for him with the daughter of a business partner. He didn't want to accept it, and they argued fiercely. After his parents left, Tan Luo came out of the corner and approached Shiryu. "You need a wife, and I need a husband. Let's get married." Tan Luo said, "I'm Sure Xian's classmate. I urgently need a legally recognized husband. I can sign an agreement with you. You can set any terms, and if you want a divorce, I can leave at any time. If you think it's absurd, you can refuse." In the end, Shiryu agreed to Tan Luo's proposal. The reason? Tan Luo heard it from Su Qi. "Don't think that just because you have a marriage certificate, you're now Mrs. Sure. Shiryu married you to wait for Lin Lan. His family pressured him, and he had no choice but to use you to temporarily keep the position of Mrs. Sure." Lin Lan was Shiryu's ex-girlfriend. 7 years ago, Shiryu proposed to her, but Lin Lan left him to chase her dream in France. In Su Qi's words, Tan Luo wasn't lucky to meet Shiryu. It was Shiryu who was lucky to find a naive woman like Tan Luo to use. The day after they reached an agreement, they went to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get their marriage certificate. Then, Tan Luo took Shiryu back to her hometown, transferred her household registration, and took King of Hell with her. Tan Luo's parents were so furious that they nearly vomited blood, and Sure Xian severed ties with her because of it. Tan Luo didn't care. On the contrary, she was happy because she and King of Hell had finally escaped that hellish place. After that day, Shiryu stayed at Su Qi's bar. He told Tan Luo that he would give her a month to think it over. If she was still planning to keep ignoring him, he would go to find her with the divorce papers after a month. Tan Luo went home alone. In the cold, gloomy house, the only thing that brought her warmth was the golden retriever Yan Wang, who had been by her side for many years. She took off her shoes and walked barefoot into the living room. Yan Wang was struggling to get up, its large body swaying and trembling as if it might fall at any moment. When Tan Luo found Yan Wang, the vet had said it was 1 year old. Now, Yan Wang was already 15, an old age for a golden retriever. Tan Luo walked over and carefully hugged its somewhat heavy and clumsy body. The cold, calm expression on her face instantly broke. She was never afraid of life and death, but the one thing she feared was waking up one day to find that she could never call this old friend, who had been with her for over 10 years, back to life. She knew it would die, and she hoped to care for it in its old age. She wished for it to pass quietly, comfortably, without pain or sorrow. The winter when she first met Yan Wang was bitterly cold, and Tan Luo still remembered it clearly. On a street with a biting wind, she wandered aimlessly, barefoot, having lived through many such abandoned days since childhood. Hunger and cold slowly eroded her soul from head to toe until she finally collapsed on the street again. After an endless abyss of darkness, Tan Luo woke up to find a tiny, bony yellow dog licking her face. At the time, she didn't know it was a golden retriever. She only knew it was a dirty, bony stray dog. Had she known at the time, Tan Luo might have sold it for a meat bun. After all, her character had always been twisted. If she could feed herself, she didn't care if it was a living being. Yes, her character was twisted. It was twisted to the point where, desperate to escape the nightmare-like family, she married Shiryu as soon as she graduated, twisted to the point where she became eccentric, cold, and closed off, rejecting all the good things in life. Soon after they got married, Shiryu discovered how difficult Tan Luo was to get along with. He had tried to understand her, but Tan Luo would always wrap herself up like a porcupine, rejecting his care, rejecting his kindness. Because of those dark times, she didn't want to recall them. Although they had deeply embedded themselves in her bones and could never be erased, she would rather be consumed by demons than have others know of her suffering. If life were peaceful, who would want to be a twisted soul? Shiryu gave Tan Luo 1 month to think it over, and today was the deadline. Tan Luo had thought about it for an entire month, but still didn't understand where she had gone wrong. What exactly went wrong between them? In the past month, she immersed herself day and night in her work. Yan Wang had been sleeping a lot lately, and apart from making time to accompany Yan Wang, Tan Luo hadn't had time to think about the divorce. She stayed up late every night and ate irregularly, causing her stomach issues to flare up. It was Monday, and after finishing the case she was working on, she asked her boss for leave to go to the hospital. Her stomach medicine was running out, and she needed to get a new prescription. Halfway to the hospital, she received a call from Shiryu's mother, her mother-in-law. Tan Luo, do you have a moment? Shiryu left something at home, and I've twisted my ankle. Could you come pick it up and deliver it to him? Tan Luo hung up the phone, pressed her aching stomach, and turned her car around without hesitation. She couldn't refuse her mother-in-law's request. When she married Shiryu, his mother had opposed the union. In fact, the entire Shir family disliked her as their daughter-in-law, and even Shir Xian, who had once tried to get close to her, didn't like her as a sister-in-law. Her malice and coldness were notorious. Everyone who knew her understood that Tan Luo was a devious, vengeful person who would never forgive anyone. 3 months ago, when she was hospitalized after being beaten, only Shiryu went to care for her. Everyone else stood by and mocked her, calling her malicious, accusing her of sending a newly adult child to jail. Tan Luo didn't care. They weren't wrong. She was indeed that malicious, never forgiving, always wrapping herself up like a porcupine. She turned back, not because she wanted to compromise with her mother-in-law, but because she had never found a chance to talk to Shiryu properly. Today seemed like an opportunity. At 11:30 a.m., Tan Luo, holding a file in one hand and a lunchbox in the other, appeared at the entrance of Shiryu's company. She called him twice, but neither call was answered. She was hesitating whether to leave the things at the front desk when a large group of people came out from the elevator. She looked up and saw Shiryu standing in the crowd, chatting happily with a fashionable woman, with Su Qi beside them. The three were engaged in an animated conversation. Tan Luo turned her gaze away, handed the file and lunchbox to the front desk. To her surprise, the receptionist waved toward the crowd, saying, "Mr. Shir, someone's looking for you." Shiryu turned around and spotted Tan Luo heading toward the door. His eyes lit up, and he immediately walked toward her, causing a stir among the people behind him. Tan Luo tried to pull her wrist away from him, but when she couldn't, she stopped struggling. Before Shiryu could speak, she pointed toward the receptionist and said, "Your mother asked me to bring these to you. The file you wanted and the ribs your mother made. Let me go, I've got things to do. You go ahead and eat." After speaking, she tried to pull away again. Shiryu didn't loosen his grip. He looked down at her, his voice hoarse. "Tan Luo, today is the last day. Have you thought it over? Do you want a divorce?" Tan Luo lowered her head, her stomach churning painfully. She pressed her hand hard against her stomach. Su Qi and the woman walked over, and Su Qi looked at Tan Luo with a mocking, triumphant tone. "Well, if it isn't Miss Tan, what brings you here?" Are you here to catch him in the act? Shiryu shot Su Qi a glare, and Su Qi immediately shut up. He tilted his head and muttered something to the woman next to him, who then began to look curiously at Tan Luo. Tan Luo slowly pried Shiryu's hand open with her other hand. Her face was pale, her expression still cold, but for the first time, her lips trembled. Shiryu, go home tomorrow. I'll prepare the divorce agreement in advance. Shiryu's expression changed drastically, and Su Qi froze, staring blankly at Tan Luo. He hadn't expected her to actually want a divorce. Tan Luo, are you sure about this? Shiryu's face turned grim as he fixed his gaze on Tan Luo. Tan Luo pressed her stomach with force, pointed at the woman next to him, and smiled sarcastically. Shiryu, this must be Lin Lan, right? Now that the lady of the house is back, you've been upfront about it, saying you'd step aside. Why bother pretending to be kind and making me say it first? It turned out this was Shiryu's mother's plan, to make her go pick up the things, show her Lin Lan's photo, and let her know Lin Lan was back. She wasn't allowed to occupy this position any longer. Tan Luo woke up in the hospital. She opened her eyes, and the room was empty. Staring at the ceiling for a while, she realized it was already dark outside. She quickly sat up on the bed. With practiced hands, she removed the needle from her wrist. Barefoot, she stumbled to the cabinet to look for clothes, her head spinning. She reached out quickly to support herself against the wall, only to be picked up in a horizontal hold. Shiryu carried her back to the bed, his face filled with concern, slight anger, and a trace of self-blame that Tan Luo didn't understand. He asked her if she hadn't been eating properly again. Tan Luo remained silent, lifting the blanket to get out of bed. Shiryu reached out to press her back down. Don't worry, I've already gone back to feed Yanwang. It's fine. Sure, Xian is at home with it. Sure enough, hearing this, Tan Luo calmed down. Shiryu felt helpless and jealous. He said, Tan Luo, if you had put half the effort you spend on Yanwang into our marriage, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Tan Luo didn't say anything. She looked down at the calluses on her palms, silently listening to whatever Shiryu had to say. Shiryu watched the nurse reinsert the needle into her arm, then feed her porridge. Tan Luo opened her mouth obediently, and once she finished the bowl, Shiryu took her cold hand in his. Tan Luo, I'm sorry. It's my fault. Let's stop fighting. If you don't want children, we won't have any. Let's just live a good life, okay? Tan Luo shuddered, her eyes reddening for the first time. She asked him why. Shiryu said that he had never thought about divorce. He was just trying to get her to face this marriage. Tan Luo didn't understand and asked about Lin Lan. Shiryu explained that the moment Lin Lan had rejected his proposal, they had already broken up. Lin Lan came back this time to try to reconcile, but Shiryu hadn't agreed to it. Today, it was Su Qi who had brought Lin Lan to the company to see him. He had already told Lin Lan everything. Tan Luo didn't believe him and called him a liar, accusing him that when he agreed to marry her, it was only to leave a spot for Lin Lan. Shiryu countered, saying that it was Su Qi's nonsense. He had never waited for Lin Lan. He agreed to marry her because he was already 30. If he didn't marry, he'd have to obey his family's arrangements, so he agreed to Tan Luo's proposal, half out of impulse, half out of rebellion. Tan Luo asked him why he didn't divorce her. She wasn't a good wife. She was twisted, selfish, and cold, a bad person. Staying married would only hold him back. Shiryu said, Tan Luo, we both need redemption. We can heal each other. 3 months ago, Shiryu hadn't gone on a business trip. He lied to Tan Luo. He secretly went to Tan Luo's hometown. The argument between them happened because Tan Luo was beaten and hospitalized. Shiryu felt heartbroken for her, angry that she didn't know how to take care of herself, and even angrier that she worked herself to the bone with no regard for her health. In Tan Luo's world, there was only work and her dog, Yanwang. Her eyes couldn't see anyone else. Shiryu felt defeated. He could sense that deep down, she longed for warmth and to be cared for. He made her breakfast, brought her late-night snacks, fed her medicine when she was sick, and stayed up with her all night. He waited for her to get off work, no matter the weather. Though her responses were always cold, mocking, and avoiding eye contact, Shiryu could feel that she yearned for this kind of quiet, warm life. Shiryu had once thought the person he would spend his life with would be a gentle, virtuous wife. He didn't understand why he had fallen for Tan Luo. She was sharp-tongued and bitter, and her only redeeming quality was her unwavering devotion to her dog. He had thought she liked raising dogs, but it seemed she only liked her own dog. All her tenderness was directed at Yan Wang. When it came to other dogs, she remained cold and dismissive. Her complex, contradictory character made Shiryu even more curious. Driven by that curiosity, he started observing her, analyzing her, and even studied psychology for her. Over time, he realized that he had unknowingly started caring about her. The more he cared, the more he worried. Tan Luo's personality made it too easy for her to offend people. Sure enough, after a case, she was beaten and hospitalized. Shiryu understood the case, and although Tan Luo wasn't wrong in her emotions, her reactions were too extreme and obsessive. Her injury had triggered him. He wanted her to go home, rest, and adjust her mood. In his frustration, he had suggested they have a child, thinking that having a baby might change her personality. However, his well-intentioned suggestion only led to a painful argument. Defeated, Shiryu decided to go to Tan Luo's hometown for answers. In the 5 years of their marriage, Tan Luo had never gone back to visit her family. Every time he suggested it, she would erupt in anger. When they had gone back to her hometown to transfer her household registration, Shiryu had already noticed the tension between Tan Luo and her family, but he hadn't expected the resentment to run so deep. It turned out that what Tan Luo needed wasn't understanding or empathy, but a cleansing of her soul, redemption. Tan Luo's past could be described with the word twisted. A twisted life, a twisted personality. Twisted. Before the age of 20, Tan Luo never saw it as a derogatory term. She interpreted it as unconventional, a brilliant perspective formed through the influence of two people who were extremely important in her life. Two people she hated for over 20 years, feared for over 20 years, and would never forgive, the executioners of her life. From the time she could remember, Tan Luo had always suspected she was adopted. Her teachers often said that there were no imperfect parents in the world, that all parents loved their children the most. Love? Maybe. The old lady liked to drink, and every time she got drunk, Tan Luo's mother would ask her to take care of her. Tan Luo hated this task, not because it was dirty, but because she would often overhear many uncomfortable truths. The old lady said that when Tan Luo was just born, she was secretly thrown into the village's big water ditch because they wanted a boy. But Tan Luo was lucky. She didn't drown, and her cries attracted the attention of the village secretary. There was no choice. Recently, only the Tan family had been having children, so they reluctantly took her back. That was the first time Tan Luo escaped death, beyond her memory. In contrast to Tan Luo's miserable fate of being abandoned at birth, her younger brother, Tan Lin, was raised in comfort. When he was born, the family threw a huge celebration, bigger than most wedding banquets in the village. Tan's father was a businessman, and Tan's mother ran a supermarket in town, so the family had good conditions. They could afford to host a grand feast for 3 days and nights. But despite such privileged conditions, it was not enough to buy Tan Luo even a single exercise book. Tan Luo had lost count of how many times she was beaten and scolded. Whether it was a chicken feather duster, a firewood stick, or a rolling pin, after the age of 3, her parents took turns beating her, usually once every 2 days. Tan Lin took her toys. She would be beaten. Tan Lin fell. She would be beaten. If her parents were in a bad mood, she would be beaten. There were too many reasons for the beatings, and Tan Luo had long since lost track. She only remembered the countless times she suffered for no reason, beaten until she had no place to hide. She cried her heart out, but they turned a deaf ear. She would hide under the table, but her mother would drag her out by the ankle, and then her father would beat her harder, almost to death. With nowhere to hide, Tenluo could only curl up on the floor, enduring the beatings from both her parents, until she was barely alive, her body covered in bruises. Knowing she was not welcome at home, Tenluo began thinking of ways to please them. At the age of 7, she started cooking, and by 8, she began doing housework. She took on all the family laundry and prepared all 3 meals, gradually becoming more skilled at cooking. But by focusing all her energy on pleasing them, her studies suffered. From elementary school to middle school, her grades were always at the bottom of the class. She took care of them meticulously, while their attention was always on her brother Tanlin, so they hardly ever cared about her academic performance. Until more and more people in the village started discussing their children's achievements. So-and-so ranked first in the class. So-and-so won another award. So-and-so is obviously an outstanding child. Slowly, Tenluo's dreadful report card became an embarrassment to her parents, and they began threatening her, insisting that if she didn't meet their expectations, they would take up the chicken feather duster and beat her until her skin was raw. Tenluo secretly hid the duster, burying it in the backyard, personally burying the one thing she hated and feared the most. But soon, they found new tools for punishment: a ruler, her father's belt, her mother's high heels. After being beaten so many times, Tenluo began to get used to it. When ordered to kneel and apologize, she would grit her teeth and hold it in. Unless they hit her until her bones could no longer endure it, she would not make a sound, even if her lips bled. The more rebellious she became, the more they tried to control her. The more they forbade her, the more she insisted on doing it, dyeing her hair, getting tattoos, fighting, and causing trouble. The more rebellious she became, the more she was beaten. They would hit her anytime, anywhere. After every parent-teacher conference, in the building stairwells on countless steps, there were traces of Tenluo's screams and pleas for mercy. They even held her down and made her kneel in front of her entire class, begging the teacher not to give up on her and to give her another chance. At that time, Tenluo was sensitive and stubborn. When she was beaten, she didn't react. She would mechanically wait for them to finish venting, then observe everyone's expressions. All the people, including the teachers, looked on with an indifferent, disdainful attitude as if they were just watching a show. After that day, she became the object of ridicule at school. Everyone sympathized with her, but also bullied her relentlessly. Countless pranks grew worse every day. The girls wrapped chewing gum in her hair, then kindly used scissors to cut off her long hair. They excluded her, isolated her, and mocked her with cruel personal attacks. The boys trapped her in the bathroom, throwing bags of dirty water at her, smearing glue on her chair, and cutting her pants with scissors. Everyone saw what was happening, but not one person helped her. Most just watched coldly, while a few joined in the ridicule, saying she was disrupting the class, and then called her parents. Once again, Tenluo would be beaten by her parents when they arrived. After countless humiliations, Tenluo became more and more self-conscious. She had a sharp tongue and was bitter. She would argue over the smallest things and would fight to the death during physical altercations. Since she stopped begging for mercy when beaten, they started using new punishments, throwing her out on the street late at night, only picking her up the next day after she begged for forgiveness. From the age of 10 to 12, Tenluo was abandoned on the streets twice a year, over and over again, with no warmth from family. Unfortunately, she didn't have the courage to escape completely at that time because she was too realistic. Without them, she wouldn't survive. At the age of 12, Tenluo encountered a stray yellow dog. The first moment she saw it, she thought she was dead, that the king of hell had finally sent someone to take her. Later, when she realized she wasn't dead, she gave it a name that reflected her feelings: Yama, the king of hell. Tenluo wasn't sure why she felt this way, but she just wanted to call it Yama. Perhaps she hoped that one day, when she opened her eyes, it would be to see the real king of hell's domain. She was afraid of pain, afraid of death, yet at the same time, she hoped that every time she opened her eyes, she would have already passed away. For some twisted, abnormal reason, Tan Luo begged her parents to let her bring Yama home. At first, she treated it as a creature more pathetic and lower than herself, a poor soul with no place in the world. When Tan Lin bullied it, Tan Luo also joined in. She thought maybe she would find some sort of pleasure in it. But as she watched it suffer, hearing its painful barking, Tan Luo started to feel as though she herself was the one suffering. Slowly, she couldn't bear it anymore. While bullying it, she began to protect it, even beating her brother Tan Lin for it. Having grown up being beaten with sticks, Tan Luo was more than capable of beating her brother, Tan Lin, until his face was bruised and swollen, even if it meant she would receive another round of combined punishment from her parents. The worst incident was when Tan Lin kept poking Yama's eyes with chopsticks, and in a panic, Yama bit him. When Tan Luo returned from school, Yama had been beaten half to death, covered in blood, lying motionless on the floor. Its wood eyes looked at her with pain and despair. Tan Luo's eyes reddened because she felt that Yama lying there was herself. In a fit of rage, she grabbed a chair and began hurling it at everyone. She held Yama in her arms, ready to jump into the river where she was abandoned as a child. Perhaps it was her desperate retaliation that frightened them, and they promised to pay for Yama's treatment. Fortunately, Yama, like her, was tough. That incident drove Tan Luo to the brink, making her want to escape this home. Throughout high school, she threw herself into her studies, furiously working on exams. School and the hospital became the places she frequented. Everyone said Tan Luo had gone crazy, so much so that even the principal tried to persuade her to take a break. Then, Tan Luo scored 671 on the college entrance exams, surprising everyone. The day after the exams, she fell seriously ill and nearly didn't survive. Fortunately, she was tough. After the exams, her parents tried to interfere with her university choices. She pretended to agree, but secretly filled out an application for a school as far from home as possible. When she left home, she took nothing with her except her ID card, Yama, and a bank card. After the exams, her parents' attitude toward Tan Luo changed. They gave her a lot of money, and Tan Luo, not too proud to accept, spent it. She rented an apartment because the school didn't allow dogs. To care for Yama properly, she specifically rented a place and spent their money without a second thought. After all, except for her tuition and living expenses, they'd spent little on her. She had a solitary personality and no friends. Throughout university, she was a lone wolf. Besides caring for Yama, she spent all her time studying, saving the scholarship money she earned while spending the money from her parents' bank card without feeling guilty. She majored in law, and after marrying Shiryu, she joined a well-known local law firm. Despite all these years, she still had no friends. But her abilities were exceptional, and despite her colleagues not liking her, she quickly established herself in the firm. After getting married, she devoted all her energy to Yama and her work. Her marriage to Shiryu was purely transactional. Shiryu was warm and had a very good temperament. Though there was no love between them, Shiryu would make her breakfast in the mornings and occasionally bring her late-night snacks when she worked overtime. Tan Luo admitted that she longed for Shiryu's warmth, but she never thought to cross the line. She remained calm, knowing both of them had their own goals. Hers was to become stronger, while his was to stay faithful to his ex-girlfriend. However, 3 months ago, Shiryu suddenly proposed having a child. Tan Luo found it absurd and reiterated the terms of their agreement. Shiryu became furious, scolding her for her coldness, and stormed off. He didn't return for 3 months. Of course, that was her understanding at the time. She didn't know that Shiryu had fallen in love with her. After Tan Luo was discharged from the hospital, she asked Shiryu to give her 1 more month to think. She needed time to calm down and reassess what this marriage meant for both of them. Shiryu agreed to give her time, saying he would wait for as long as needed. To accommodate Tan Luo's emotional state, he moved out of their home and planned to stay with Su Qi for a while. Half a month later, Tan Luo met Lin Lan, who had somehow obtained her address and came to visit. Yama's body was growing weaker, and Tan Luo wanted to be with it at all times, so she invited Lin Lan into the house. Lin Lan arrogantly handed her a receipt, claiming it was from Shiryu's mother. Tan Luo, although you took Shiryu from me, I should thank you for not giving him a child all these years. I abandoned Shiryu back then, and if it weren't for you being useless, the Shir family wouldn't have accepted me back. So here's the money, divorce him. This is your best option. Tan Luo ripped up the check and threw it in Lin Lan's face, then grabbed a broom to chase her out. The two women began to fight at the door when a man suddenly rushed in holding a knife. Tan Luo recognized the man. He was the father of the boy who had bullied her in school and beaten her twice. Tan Luo never expected him to find her. She immediately slammed the door shut and called the police, but the door didn't fully close because Lin Lan was blocking it with her body. By the time Tan Luo pushed Lin Lan out of the way, it was too late. The man, with bloodshot eyes and a menacing expression, cursed as he lunged at Tan Luo. Just then, Lin Lan stepped aside, and the man charged at Tan Luo with a knife. Woof. Yama, dragging its heavy and frail body, charged at the man. The old dog, no longer as agile or fierce as before, its once white fur now tinged with age, was slow and awkward in its movements. It barked at the man, biting his pants leg, but its teeth had fallen out, so it couldn't hold on. Finally, it threw itself in front of Tan Luo. Seeing the man advancing with a knife, Tan Luo's face changed drastically. Without thinking, she rushed to hug Yama, trying to protect it with her own body. But even Yama, who could hardly stand, found a burst of strength. It suddenly shook itself free from Tan Luo's grip and threw itself at the man. Smack! Tan Luo grabbed a vase and slammed it into the man's head, then collapsed to the floor. She stared blankly at the blood-soaked Yama, unable to cry, dry heaving as her stomach churned. When Shiryu rushed over, the police had already subdued the man with the knife. Tan Luo sat on the ground, holding Yama in her arms, her eyes unfocused, covered in blood, as if her soul had left her body. Shiryu, what should we do? What should we do? There will be no more Yama, there's no Yama anymore, Tan Luo said when she saw him, her voice dazed. She then completely lost herself. No matter how much Shiryu shook her or called her name, she didn't respond. Noticing that her lips kept moving, Shiryu leaned in to listen closely and finally heard her delirious murmurs. I promised I'd take care of you in your old age. You can't die like this. Yama, get up. You can't die like this. You promised you'd stay with me. How can you die like this? How can you leave me? What should I do without you? What am I supposed to do? Tan Luo clung to Yama's body, refusing to let anyone near. Anyone who tried to touch her faced her frantic resistance. She stayed there, hugging Yama, for an entire day and night, insisting that Yama's soul hadn't left yet, and she needed to stay with it. Eventually, Shiryu had to ask the doctor to give her a sedative. When Tan Luo woke up, Shiryu told her they would bury Yama properly, but she refused to go. It's a liar. I won't forgive it. It promised to stay with me forever. I knew it would die, but it can't die like this. It was supposed to protect me. I won't thank it. You bury it well, but when I forgive it, I'll visit it, Tan Luo said. After Yama's death, Tan Luo fell ill again. Shiryu arranged for her to take a long leave, planning to take her on a trip to relax. The day before they left, Tan Luo's parents and Tan Lin came to visit. We heard Yama died. That dog has been with Luo Luo for over 10 years. We were worried about her, so we came to check on her. She's been stubborn since childhood, and we're afraid she might not handle this well. Tan Luo didn't want to see them. She asked Shiryu to send them away, telling him to relay that she would never forgive them in this lifetime, not even in death. Her parents left in regret and despair. After sending them off, Shiryu went to the Shir family first. After a big argument with his mother, he went to the police station. Shiryu informed the police that Lin Lan had been the accomplice of the man who killed Yama, and Lin Lan was taken by the police. She disappeared after that. After returning from the trip, Tan Luo's mood improved. With Shiryu's careful companionship, she began to slowly forget the past and make peace with herself. In an effort to ease her anger, she quit her job as a lawyer and opened a cafe. The day before the cafe officially opened, Suchi met with Tan Luo. Then she spent the entire afternoon at Yama's grave. When she returned home, Shiryu was busy in the kitchen. Tan Luo took off her shoes, walked barefoot into the kitchen, and hugged Shiryu from behind. I heard dogs have memories. After they die, if they can't let go of their previous master, they might come back in another form. Shiryu, let's have a child. Shiryu froze for a moment, setting the plate down. He caught sight of her bare feet and turned to hold her, letting her step onto his feet. Are you sure? I'm sure. Shiryu, I want a child. Okay, but there's one condition. What? The child can't be named Shiryama. I'll choose the name. Okay, I'll leave it to you. When Tan Luo found out she was pregnant, she was extremely nervous. She clutched Shiryu's clothes tightly, and Shiryu knew exactly what she was worried about. He gently held Tan Luo in his arms, as kind and patient as ever. Luo, this is our child. We'll love him and give him a happy childhood. You can do that, right? Tan Luo rubbed her belly, and suddenly, a wave of relief washed over her. Yes, her unfortunate childhood had been given to her by her parents, something she couldn't heal. But she could give her and Shiryu's child a happy childhood. That, too, was the best way to heal her old wounds. 10 months later, Tan Luo gave birth to a son. As she looked at the black birthmark on his right ankle, she cried. Then, through her tears, she began to smile. Shiryu held her in his arms, trying to comfort her, but Tan Luo couldn't stop crying. Shiryu, Yama had a black birthmark on his right ankle, exactly the same as our son's.